The sip was as cold and sharp as the glint in my granddaughter's eyes. It tasted of chamomile and betrayal, a sickly sweet flavor that turned to a searing, metallic burn the instant it hit my tongue. My throat clenched, not from a simple swallow, but from a living, burning fire that roared to life in my chest. The world tilted violently on its axis, my vision blurring into a watery smear of light, and my heart, once a steady drum for 72 years, began to hammer a frantic, dying rhythm against my ribs. The cup, a gift from a birthday past, slipped from my trembling hand and shattered on the patio stones like the last vestiges of my trust. Through the searing agony and the deafening roar in my ears, I saw her, my granddaughter, Savannah. She wasn't running. She wasn't screaming. She was simply watching me, her face a mask of serene, cold triumph, the faint, practiced smile never reaching her dead eyes. In that single, horrifying moment, as my body began to shut down, I knew. She hadn't brought me tea. She had brought me death. The familiar, humid Houston air, once filled with the scent of jasmine and the distant hum of cicadas, now felt suffocating. Every breath was a struggle. My consciousness flickered, a dying flame in a hurricane. But the truth burned brighter than the poison. This was no accident. This was a final, calculated act of familial love. A lie so profound it felt like a hole opening up in the universe. The searing agony in my throat was nothing compared to the cold, gut-wrenching realization that the girl I had raised, the one who had once drawn me crayon pictures and told me she loved me, had just tried to murder me. As my body began to give way, as the floor rushed up to meet me, a profound sense of loss, not for my own life, but for her broken soul, was the last thought that consumed me. The darkness took me then, but I was not defeated. I was dying, but I knew, with an unshakable certainty, that this was not the end, but the beginning. Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to the channel and press that bell icon so you don't miss our next true stories, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Your support helps us share these messages with more people who need hope. For 45 years, I had taught history at Lamar High School, standing at the front of a classroom that had come to feel like home. I instilled in my students a love for the past and a hope for the future, sharing stories of revolutionaries, poets, and pioneers. My financial security was a direct result of that long, fulfilling career, a meticulously managed pension with the teacher retirement system of Texas. It was more than a nest egg. It was a testament to decades of dedication, a sum built not for personal extravagance, but for a higher purpose. My dream, a quiet, simple one that had grown from a seed of an idea years ago, was to establish the Hope Garden. It would be a community garden and food bank in the 3rd Ward, a place where fresh produce could combat food insecurity and where my neighbors could find a sense of community, a place to gather and share. The entire pension, with every single dollar, was slated to fund this project. I had it all planned out, down to the number of raised beds and the type of heirloom tomatoes we would grow. It was my legacy, a way to give back to the city that had given me so much. My granddaughter, a brilliant but deeply troubled woman named Savannah, was the only family I had left. The daughter of my late son, she was a striking, ambitious woman who had graduated with honors from Rice University. A substantial inheritance from her father, a gift meant to be her start in life, had been poured into a social media app she had created called Aura. It was meant to be the next big thing, a competitor to Instagram, a platform for artists and influencers to connect directly with their audience. Savannah had poured every ounce of her intellect and charisma into it, but the venture had been a catastrophic failure. A series of poor decisions and miscalculations, a fatal misreading of the market, had left her with a product no one wanted to use. The failure was not just financial, it was a profound blow to her ego. In her desperation, she had turned to a ruthless venture capitalist group in Austin. The deal was predatory, a high-interest loan with a punishing repayment schedule. The debt, a 7-figure sum that had spiraled out of control with crippling interest, was now due. She had been receiving legal documents and threatening emails from the firm's lawyers from Kirkland and Ellis. The documents, with their harsh legalese wording, were a daily reminder of her impending ruin. Her perfect, meticulously constructed life was on the verge of collapsing. She had come to believe, in her desperation, that my pension was her only way out. It was a sum of money large enough to solve her problems, to make the bad dreams go away. Over the last few months, she had been visiting me with unusual frequency, a change from her usual self-absorbed existence. The visits were always punctuated by subtle, probing questions about my will, my financial affairs, and the specifics of my pension. "Grandma, have you updated your will?" she would ask, her voice casual, but her eyes betraying a predatory hunger that was chilling in its transparency. "Are you sure you need all that money just for a garden?" She had no idea the dream of the garden was the very thing that sustained me, the hope that kept me going. I had always dismissed her questions as a sign of her apathetic curiosity, a youthful inability to comprehend the value of a life's work. It was only later, when the truth was laid bare, that I would recognize her calculating questions for what they truly were, the careful work of a spider weaving its final web. The visit was a well-orchestrated performance, a final act of familial intimacy before the curtain fell on my life. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of Houston day where the heat was a constant, shimmering presence, but the humidity was held in check just enough to make sitting outside bearable. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine from the climbing vines on my fence, and the distant drone of a lawnmower provided a lazy, summer soundtrack. Savannah arrived precisely on time, a beautiful bouquet of pristine white lilies clutched in one hand. The flowers were a stark contrast to her casual, almost worn look. Her once impeccable sense of style had given way to an anxious dishevelment. Her hair was pulled back haphazardly, and there were dark circles under her eyes, a sign of her recent sleepless nights spent in a spiral of desperation. In her other hand, she carried a gift bag from the Tea Sip, a local Houston favorite. The paper rustled as she moved, a sound that felt oddly jarring in the quiet afternoon. She wanted to film a Grandma and Me series for her fading app. She explained, a desperate attempt to boost its traffic and visibility. "It's so authentic, Grandma," she said, pulling out a sleek Canon camera from a canvas bag. "People love a natural vibe. We'll just talk, laugh, and sip tea. It's perfect." Her enthusiasm felt thin, a fragile mask over something far more sinister. I smiled and nodded, playing my part in her little charade. Not because I believed her, but because the pretense of normalcy was a comfort. I had just finished my daily walk around the neighborhood loop and was feeling a little tired, a gentle ache in my knees and a pleasant warmth in my bones. "You must be exhausted," she said, her voice dripping with an uncharacteristic sweetness. "Let me make the tea. You just sit and relax." The gesture was so kind, so perfectly timed, it disarmed me completely. It was a move from a playbook I hadn't known existed. As she walked inside, a single, cold, crystalline thought passed through my mind. It was a thought that did not feel like my own, a whisper of a warning that cut through the lazy afternoon haze. Be a witness. It was a directive, simple and stark, and I found myself obeying it without question. I watched her through the patio doors. Her hands, usually so graceful and practiced with her phone, were shaking, the tea kettle rattling in her grip. She fumbled with a small, unbranded vial, a glass cylinder of pure, colorless liquid so clear it was almost invisible. The motion was so quick, so practiced, it was clear she had rehearsed this. She squeezed a few drops into the tea and stirred it with a delicate silver spoon. The clinking sound seemed deafeningly loud, a tiny death knell in the quiet house. When she returned, her smile was a little too wide, a little too practiced, her eyes not quite reaching it. "Here you go, Grandma," she said, her voice a little too sweet. "Chamomile, just the way you like it." The cup she offered me was a floral porcelain one, a birthday gift from her years ago. The irony of it all felt like a physical blow. The tea, a sweet chamomile, tasted faintly of metal, a sickly sweet flavor that tasted of poison and betrayal. I took a few sips, the warmth of the liquid a lie against the cold, leaden lethargy that was already settling over my body. My limbs felt heavy, my mind a fog, and the sounds of the neighborhood began to fade into a dull, distant roar. The tea was the last thing I would taste before the world went dark. As the poison took hold, I felt my body begin to shut down. The world became a distant, hazy blur, and the sounds of the neighborhood faded into a dull roar. The last thing I remembered was a profound, soul-crushing despair, not for my own life, but for the soul of the girl who had done this. My heart, a steady drum for 72 years, began to flutter, a frantic, dying bird trapped in a cage of bone. And then, as if from nowhere, a profound, unearthly warmth flooded my veins, a warmth that was not from a person, but from a source I could not see. It felt like a gentle hand was holding my heart, and another running a cool, cleansing fire through my veins, incinerating the poison. The numbness in my limbs vanished, replaced by a tingling sense of pure, unadulterated energy. I felt the poison being neutralized in my system, not slowly, but in a sudden, overwhelming surge of grace. My body, which had been on the precipice of death, was now a vibrant, humming symphony of life. I was not just alive, I was fully, completely, and miraculously well. The world, which had been gray and muted, suddenly burst into brilliant color. The air, which had been thick and suffocating, now felt crisp and clean, and I could taste the sweet scent of jasmine and the distant hum of cicadas again, so sharp it was almost painful. My mind, which had been a fog of confusion, was now clear and sharp, a beacon in the darkness. I felt the poison being neutralized in my system, not slowly, but in a sudden, overwhelming surge of grace. My body, which had been on the precipice of death, was now a vibrant, humming symphony of life. I was not just alive, I was fully, completely, and miraculously well. It felt like a symphony of light and sound had been played in my soul, and I was the grateful audience. The world, which had been a blur of watery colors, now snapped into a high-definition clarity. The leaves on the trees, the intricate patterns on the patio stones, the faint wrinkles on my own hands, all were suddenly and profoundly present. The experience was not just physical, it was deeply spiritual. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, a feeling that defied all logic. I was not afraid. There was no fear, no anger, no bitterness. There was only a profound sense of love, a love that was not earned but freely given. It was a love that reached into the darkest parts of my soul and healed them, a love that made me whole again. The feeling was a profound and spiritual one, a realization that I was not alone, that I had been watched over, that I had been rescued. I felt my spirit, once on the precipice of leaving my body, returning with a renewed sense of purpose and a profound gratitude. I had been given a second chance, a gift that I knew was not for my own sake, but for the sake of the garden. My life, once a quiet, unremarkable existence, had been given a second act, a testament to a force far greater than myself. The warmth that had flooded my veins lingered, a quiet hum of energy in my bones. My heart, which had been a frantic, dying bird, was now a steady, peaceful drum, beating a rhythm of thanks. I was no longer a victim. I was a living miracle. And as I lay on the patio stones listening to the cicadas, I felt the tears of awe and gratitude running down my face, a testament to a grace that was as vast and as limitless as the Houston sky. The pain was gone, the fear was gone, and there was only the quiet, unshakable certainty that I had been witness to something truly divine. My life, which had been nearly stolen, was now a living testament to a love that was stronger than any poison. Savannah's theatrical scream, a high-pitched sound of feigned panic, was what truly saved me in that moment, for it brought the neighbors running. As the paramedics arrived, they found a scene that defied all their training. I was lying on the patio stones, but my skin was warm to the touch, and my pulse, a quick, steady rhythm, was perfectly strong. Savannah's panic story of me suddenly collapsing just didn't align with the physical evidence. They rushed me to Texas Medical Center as a precaution, a mystery patient whose vitals were inexplicably perfect despite the terrifying circumstances. At the hospital, the medical staff's bewilderment only deepened. A battery of blood tests and scans were run, each one confirming the impossible. I was, in every measurable way, a picture of health. The toxicology report was what finally broke the facade. The poison, a rare, potent neurotoxin derived from a South American plant, was found in my system in a lethal dose. The head of toxicology, a seasoned veteran of countless similar cases, was visibly shaken. Medically, he said, shaking his head, this is not possible. A dose this large should have caused organ failure within minutes. There is no known antidote. It was then that Dr. Ethan, a young attending physician known for his quiet faith, took a moment to speak with my daughter. He had been present during the initial triage, and something about my case had resonated with him on a level beyond science. Your grandmother, he said to her, his voice low and reverent, was a walking miracle. The medical charts are clear. She was supposed to die. There is no other explanation for her survival. His words weren't a medical opinion. They were a spiritual declaration. The hospital's legal team, recognizing the suspicious nature of the case, had already contacted the Houston Police Department. When the officers arrived, they were shown the toxicology report and the inexplicable perfection of my vitals. Savannah, seeing her carefully constructed lie unraveling before her eyes, panicked. Her perfect life, built on a foundation of deceit, was crumbling. She received a text from one of her acquaintances, a medical intern, about a miracle patient, and she knew her time was up. Savannah's perfect facade shattered like glass, a splintering of her carefully constructed reality. The sound of the police cars was a distant, menacing siren song in the back of her mind. She bolted from the hospital waiting room, a blind animal in a desperate, final attempt to flee. Her thoughts were a frantic, tangled mess of fear and rage, but one terrifying realization was crystal clear. Her life was over. The perfect facade, the meticulously crafted image of success and ambition, had dissolved into a nightmare. In a moment of sheer desperation, she snatched the keys to a friend's Harley-Davidson, a roaring beast of a machine she had never dared to ride. She swung a leg over the seat, her hands fumbling with the ignition, and with a deafening roar, she sped away from the hospital. The wind tore at her face and hair as she careened down Highway 288, the landscape blurring into a dizzying streak of neon lights and concrete. The police sirens were a relentless howl behind her, a sound that followed her like a shadow. She was no longer a person. She was a cornered animal, a creature stripped of its humanity, its face a blank, empty canvas of utter defeat. The roar of the engine was a futile protest against the inevitable. She wove wildly through the traffic, a terrifying, out-of-control missile, her mind a singular, panicked thought, escape. She swerved to avoid a slow-moving sedan, and the motorcycle, a roaring beast she could not control, slammed into a concrete barrier with a sound that was a sickening symphony of twisting metal and splintering bone. The impact was catastrophic. The world turned into a chaotic kaleidoscope of light and pain, a violent symphony of screeching tires and shattering glass. She was rushed to the emergency room, but the damage was already done. The trauma to her jaw and throat was beyond repair, her perfect face a mangled ruin of crushed bone and torn flesh. The doctors, in a cruel and ironic twist of fate, were forced to perform a tracheostomy and insert a permanent feeding tube. She who had tried to poison me with a cup of tea was now unable to eat, drink, or speak, her mouth a mangled mess of scarred flesh and bone. Her punishment was a physical, tangible reality, a constant and brutal reminder of her crime. The beautiful girl who had been so obsessed with her flawless image was now a silent, broken woman, her perfect life and her perfect lies shattered by a single, catastrophic act of poetic justice. Today, my life is a testament to the power of grace and purpose. I used the teacher retirement system of Texas Pension to establish the Hope Garden. It's a vibrant, living thing, a garden where our community harvests not just food, but hope. I visit Savannah often. She cannot speak, but she writes on a small whiteboard. I have forgiven her. My forgiveness is a simple daily act of love, a testament to a faith that transcends the need for retribution. I help her with her feeding tube. I read to her, and I pray for her. In a world that is so consumed by bitterness and revenge, I have chosen to live by the words of Isaiah. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. I have found that God's justice is not about revenge, but about restoring us to a place of grace. My life, once nearly stolen by malice, has been given back to me tenfold, not through bitterness, but through divine intervention. If you are struggling with a similar betrayal, remember that your story is not over. You have the power to turn your pain into a platform for hope and healing. Be a beacon of light in your own darkness. Your support helps us share these messages of hope and resilience with more people who are searching for their own beacon of light in the darkness. Thank you, and may God bless you in your darkest moments and beyond.